Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Vintage Motocross Radio. I'm your host, Joe Abadi. If you get a moment and you're at your computer or your phone, please share the show with your friends. We're going to have a great guest on in just a moment. This program is made possible today with the help of our sponsors, Nightmare Racing, the best reproduction Kawasaki plastic on the planet. Preston Petty, the legend continues. Amsoil, the first in synthetic oil since 1973. Full Circle Racing, rims, spokes, lacing, and truing for all your vintage and modern bikes. Vintco, keep the ride going with over 650 products in their catalog. Motion Pro for specialized tools, cables, and controls. Be sure to visit all of our sponsors online and on Facebook. And don't forget to join me on October 25th when my guest will be David Bailey. My guest today began his career riding in the desert in Southern California in the early 70s. By 1976, he had worked his way through the ranks of local motocross competition and soon found himself with a full factory support ride from Team Suzuki. He competed in the 125, 250, and 500 national events, and in 1979 was crowned the 500cc national champion. Along with Donnie Hansen, Johnny O'Mara, and Chuck Sun, he rounded out a squad that became the first team to win the Motocross des Nations for the USA. He was also part of a team that competed for the Baja 1000, and he won not once, but 3 times. Perhaps his most memorable racing accomplishment came in 1982, where he was crowned the 250cc world champion. He's also one of the very few riders inducted into the Hall of Fame twice, once for his racing achievements alone in 2000, and a second time as part of the 1981 Motocross des Nations team in 2003. It's my pleasure this morning to have as my guest Mr. Danny LaPorte. Dan, are you there?
Hi, Joe. Thanks a lot for the intro.
Oh, you're very welcome, and I'm sure there's a whole lot more to it. But if I continue on with talking about all your accomplishments in your amazing career, it'll be a while before we ever actually got down to the real questions of the show.
Yeah.
So, again, Dan, let's begin with your journey with motorcycles. What was your first bike, and where did you get it?
All right. My first thing on 2 wheels was a little mini bike, a Bonanza, and it had a jack shaft, and that was, I thought, was pretty cool back then. I learned to ride around in my backyard in Walteria and Torrance, and that's kind of how that started. And then the next real motorcycle I had was a Hodaka 100, and then this is the very, very beginning. And just on that, it was really funny because how it all started was my dad. I was in the backyard of my house in Torrance playing around the swimming pool, and my dad drives up in the truck, and he's got a Bultaco in the back of the truck. At the time, I think it was a Persang or something, and that's when I first saw a dirt bike pull into our driveway. And I was probably, 10 or 11 or something like that. And that's kind of how it all started. And then, I started just to do little local races. And then there was a race actually near San Pedro, we call it Four Corners, in Gaffey Street in L.A. And I rode the first race I ever in a kind of a field unofficial event there. And it's really funny now because I drive by it every day on the way home from work.
And that was on the Hodaka, Dan?
Yeah, it was on a Hodaka.
Now, you talked about your dad bringing a Bultaco home. Was he an avid desert rider too?
Well, that's kind of how we got started. Back at that time, his buddy and him, they got the bikes, and the closest place they go riding was out to the desert there north of Los Angeles, place called, we call it kind of now Bean Canyon area.
Okay.
But it's Palmdale. We call it Holiday Hills, and we'd go camping there. That's kind of how it all started. And his best buddy, who was in the Army with, and he grew up with Joe Anastasio. We all kind of started riding together out there, and his kids, and we'd get camp and go riding, and that was it. We'd spend a couple days out there and moto away.
Tell me a little bit more about your early career in racing too, not just riding, of course, leisurely in the desert with Dad, but where were some other tracks that you raced, and what kind of bikes were you riding when, you got off the Hodaka and you started to be a little more competitive with things?
Yeah, I think after the Hodaka, we got a Penton. I get the hand-me-down bikes. You know, my dad raced one, and my sister was even riding.
Oh.
And so I would think it was a Penton 125 then, the next bike I had. And, you know, it kind of morphed. And back, you know, there wasn't an 80, or there wasn't bikes between, or 50, 60, 65, 80. You know, you had to go from a Bonanza mini bike to a tall motorcycle.
Sure.
So it was kind of a hard transition. You know, I was short then too. I wasn't very tall. So, it's just doing local races at Saddleback, and at that time, those, you know, there was Saddleback, there was Indian Dunes, there was Carlsbad, and those are the races the tracks I try to get to on the weekends. You know, it was just mostly for fun, and so that's kind of that part. That's kind of how it started. My amateur racing was pretty much Saddleback, Carlsbad, and Indian Dunes.
So now you're on this little Penton, and you're getting around there. You're getting around there pretty good. You soon go from amateur to expert. How long does that take?
Well, it took you know, it was really funny. You know, even back in those days, I actually, after the Penton, I had a Rickman 120, a Rickman 100 Hodaka.
Okay.
Forgot about that. And then I had a 125 Zundap. And but back then, you know, I was racing actually at Ascot as well. You know, Ascot Park was a big part of, you know, it was literally, I could race. I started racing on the 125s, the 100s, the 100 Hodakas, and the Zundaps, and whatever I had. I don't know. We took out to race, but you could race Ascot Wednesday night, which usually I would do, and then sometimes Friday night at Indian Dunes. I believe Friday night, and then I'd race Sunday at either Saddleback, Carlsbad, or back to Indian Dunes. And so, you know, I was 15, 16 years old, racing 3 days a week. And
who's there helping you, Dan? I mean, is it your dad is taking you to the races and stuff?
Yeah, my mom and dad. I had, you know, my parents were amazing, and we did it more as a family thing, just to keep us all busy, you know. But I'd come home from school, you know, on the weekends work on the bike when I could. During the week, it was like the bikes nearly stayed loaded in the back of our van the entire time. You know, I'd have to maybe clean in the filter or oil the chain or do something, but it was always just off to another race. My mom would make food, put it in the cooler, and sometimes my dad was still working, so I'd just go alone or with my mom, and we'd head out to either Indian Dunes or Ascot or Saddleback. Because at the age, you know, I wasn't really driving at the time.
Sure.
So that's kind of how it was, and it was a really great time. Think about it, you know, in Los Angeles, you could practice down the street on a dirt lot, and then ride back home on the street with, you know, down the street. It was really funny, on a dirt bike, drive it home, load in the van, and then go race. So we hardly even changed tires. I think probably changing tires is such a big deal, you know. So I would probably maybe do 7 or 8 races before I even changed tires.
Unbelievable.
Now,
at that age, I guess by then you're maybe 16 or so. Some kids are thinking about college, getting an education. Did that path cross your mind at all? Because I mean, you went on to have a course.
I'll skip a little bit of that stuff and move right up. I mean, I was literally, it's part of that story before, but I was 17 or 18, 17 I think, and I had quit riding. And literally, I just kind of, like you, to your point was, you know, what is there really a future to it, you know? And I, at the time, and I didn't really, I thought probably I'd have to go to school, go to work for my dad. He was an electrical contractor, and one of those, or get a job, whatever. I wasn't thinking about ever racing. And then I had this, I got this idea to drive up with my sister's boyfriend. His name's Jim Wilson, was a great rider in the air, and a local guy, you know.
Jimmy Wilson?
Jim Wilson, yeah.
Oh, okay.
and we all went up to Snake River to watch Evel Knievel jump the Grand Canyon. And I think maybe Jim was racing at the time still, but yeah, he definitely was racing. No, he had stopped because I think he hurt himself at Carlsbad on a CZ when he hit a spectator. But anyway, we were up there, and I went with my girlfriend and and Jim and my sister, and we went to watch Evel Knievel jump the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
And there was a race at the same time in conjunction with it. And Marty Smith wins the race, and I think he made $8,000 or $9,000, $10,000 at the time. And I was just going, oh my God, I can't believe it. I was racing against Marty, up until the time, he had gone already on the Nationals that year. And then he wins the Snake River race. And I got so motivated by that. We drove back to LA. I went and literally bought with my own money that I earned working for my father that summer, a Honda 125 Elsinore. And I went to a local track and threw some nut shocks on it or something. I can't remember what. Actually, they worked pretty good at the time. Just didn't want to hit any big G outs with them. But so started doing Saddleback, Carlsbad, and I suppose I can't even remember, but I think I did well enough to get a support from Kelvin Franks on the Franks bike. And Kelvin got me going out there, and I started showing up with bikes every weekend, and I was just like totally stoked, So I kept racing every weekend, racing 2 classes. Back then you'd blow one bike up, and then you'd grab the 250. He had a Suzuki in his own chassis, 250. The bikes were all pretty fast, just radically built, and they'd blow up nearly every other weekend. But that kept me on wheels underneath me until I got a call from Suzuki one night while I was in the garage in Torrance working on doing something, I can't remember. And so it really, I have to say, kind of my career came back because of Marty Smith. I have to really say that, he had a big impression on my life at that time. And so I don't really want to, I love Marty to death, and he was a great guy, and his wife Nancy were great people. So I just, that got me kind of going again. And he was such a great guy too. Actually, started back, and I got a call from Suzuki. Anyway, I'm back in the garage in Torrance, and I'm working on something, and then my parents say, hey, somebody's on the phone for you. So I pick up the phone, and it's Tosh Koyoma at Suzuki. And Tosh says, hey, I'll never forget, Danny, this is Tosh from Suzuki. We would like to talk to you, Could you come down to Suzuki? And about racing the championships the next year. And so I said, well, can I call you back? So I go to my parents. I go, hey, Mom, Dad, what do you think? I have this opportunity to go race the Nationals. What do you think about it? And they said, well, you got to do what you want to do, So I ended up going down to Suzuki the next day, and during the next week, a couple of days later, and signed a contract with them to race the 125 Nationals. And so that was the beginning of my career. It was really funny because, it was like I had a choice at that time, really, not just before that. My mom and dad had said, you're 18, nearly 18, and you've got to decide what you're going to do. Go to school, go to work, or if you're not going to do anything, you got to move out.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of, my eyes wide open, and I go, I'm going to go race, So that was it. That was kind of that I was so fortunate and lucky to have that opportunity to get back out there and show my skills, and then have somebody call me on the phone was a great moment.
So tell me this, Dan. When do you get your first works bike? Where was it? How was it delivered to you? What was the difference between that and anything else you had ever ridden?
Well, at the time, the bikes that I raced, the very first national, I really didn't even ride a factory bike until I had test bikes and practice bikes and things like that before I started riding a few local races on the Suzuki, but not much time. I literally went to the first national not long after that.
Well, I think your first national. I'm sorry. I was going to say, I thought your first national was Hangtown, 1976.
It was.
So
that's right.
You couldn't have had too much time on the bike.
No, I didn't really have much time on the bike, and I didn't have a practice bike, factory practice bike. I had a modified RM, right, with worked pretty well. So it's really kind of hard to go. No, actually the stock bike worked really, really well. It had a factory cylinder and had a factory pipe and some factory suspension. But the chassis was stock. It didn't have a lot of titanium and magnesium and all the fancy things, right? The factory bikes had at the time. So the bike was different. And so then you have to just go jump on a factory bike literally the day of the race.
Ah.
And it's kind of throws you off. It's really, you actually feel better. And the time it was not just me having those same problems. Yamaha was the same. A lot of times the riders felt more comfortable on their practice bikes, they weren't full factory bikes. And so, even though a factory bike may be better on paper, lighter, faster, it's like a tool. A bike, you get used to how it works. Even though it's got its bad points, you just kind of adapt to them, right?
Sure. Now,
at least you should do that.
yeah. And Dan, when I was doing the research, and it's something that we've all been kind of familiar with from that year, the 125 class was literally stacked with talent. I mean, between you, Hannah, Smith, Glover, Warren Reed, Steve Wise, Grossi, Kessler, the list goes on. And then you had, of course, those little satellite teams from FMF and DG and
I know.
You
was
had
incredible. Well, going back, like you said, going back and looking at the results.
Yeah.
My eyes were just, and I remember the time and going, wow, how am I going to do this? And this is serious. Now, there's so many, and you look at a lineup, even at a local race, there's every guy on that list is someone that was a contender. It wasn't like 2 or 3 guys that you really had to worry about. Later on, that happened with me, right, in the nationals and world titles. It's always only 2 or 3. But at a local level in California, it was amazing, and you were battling, even coming up to the ranks, back up a little bit. I remember moving from the novice classes in California to the intermediate classes, like, oh my God, these guys, every one of them haul ass.
Yeah.
It's like, they're like the speed of everything sped up so much from junior to intermediate, or novice to intermediate, whatever it was.
Sure.
It's like, it's unreal. Ascot, Saddleback, these guys are on fire. And then the pro class is a whole other thing. So every time you moved up, it was, maybe that's the same today, probably is, but but looking back at the lineup of all the riders that were accomplished, like I said, in California, you could ride 4 nights a week, and these guys were good on their tracks. Some guys specialize in some tracks better than others. Some guys were more Carlsbad guys, some guys were more Indian Dune guys, there were guys more Saddleback, there were more, so they were SoCal. You had, if I went to Carlsbad, I was racing against completely different guys than it was at Indian Dunes, and they were all really good, in their little territories. So I think that's probably what helped me out too, is not being afraid to go down to Carlsbad, go to Indian Dunes, go to Saddleback, and jump right in.
Yeah.
So. And it was impressive with all the guys, that were there at the time.
Well, Dan, you had a great year that year. I mean, it was your first year out of the box there, and you finished 3rd behind Marty, who had been
well, the very first race, you got to, no one probably remembers the story. You don't really know, but the very first national, I was right there with the guys battling. I was a little, nervous, and I think it was top 2 or 3 maybe. First moto, 4th, I don't know, 3. And then I was thinking, I can do this, right? The second moto, my fork snapped off on the Suzuki.
Oh.
And no one knows why I lost. I literally could have won the championship. I had a chance to, if that hadn't happened. And then not only that, your forks break off like that, and I was KO'd. My dad was literally not far from the track. When he saw that, he literally jumped over the fences, ran out, and then with the paramedics, they figured got me conscious. And he took me, I'll never forget, grabbed me, he carried me in his arms all the way to the truck, hauled ass out of the track at Hangtown, no ambulance, just with my dad. And if you knew my dad, it was really him. He was great. He was like amazing.
Dan, that happened on your first day at Hangtown?
His name was Joe too. So.
Oh, but Dan, that happened on your first national at Hangtown?
Yeah. That was. No one knows the story, but I always read about that race, and Hangtown, Marty, and Hannah. Well, I was right in there.
Oh yeah.
They forgot to say that my fork snapped off. But anyway, So back then, the Suzuki the bikes were ultra lightweight, the factory bikes, and they used hollow magnesium sand casted triple clamps.
Wow.
So they were, so a casting is like bread crumbs kind of packed together, right?
Yes.
They're not really that solid. And then you got it's magnesium. And so at the time, the bikes were going from, 9.5, 10 inches of travel up to 11 and a half, right?
Yes.
So 2 years earlier, when you're racing in Europe, the factory bikes, Gaston Raillet, was racing they were 9 and 9 inches, but then they kept creeping up, but they didn't recalculate probably for the extra leverage on the forks. I don't know. I'm just talking out loud, but that's one of the reasons. The stems were so thin, and the triple clamps were so hollow, and it just, who knows? They just blew right off the bike. So you have to not only come back and go race the next weekend, but you have to believe that your forks aren't going to break off again, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of traumatic, It takes the wind out of your sails. The very first outing on a factory bike. But you're young and you don't care. You just want to go out and race again. So then so that's kind of what happened. And even actually before that, I broke off another pair on a 250 at a Florida Series race on a factory bike as well. So I snapped off 2 of them, and it was kind of getting old at the time. But anyway, we all survived, and Suzuki was amazing through the whole time. They really cared a lot for me, and really got the confidence back in me right away. So I didn't have a problem after that. They fixed the problem.
Did you
anyway?
Did you race the 125 GP in Ohio that year too, Dan?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I did race a GP that year, and I had a pretty interesting. I can't remember what happened in the motos exactly, my finishes, but it was really funny. I do remember this though happening. On the last lap before the lap, I thought I got the checkered flag,
right?
And literally pulled off the track, drove back into the pits. And I'll never forget this. Gaston Raillet looking at me, jumping up and down in the air, going, Denny, you have to go back out. You have to go back out. Oh. You didn't fit. And I turned around and went back out and took the checkered flag. It was the funniest thing. How junior is that?
Well, yeah. I mean, at a Grand Prix too. It's not like it was just, it's not like you're
I say I'm going to blame it on I was delirious. It was too hot or something. Anyway.
I've got a quote here from Bob Hanna, and it's going to lead up to my next question. The quote is, and I quote, Danny LaPorte was a guy that I couldn't dislike if I tried, and here I am riding against him for the 77 AMA 125 National Championships. And I had to let a guy go by me that I don't like and I never have liked. I had to let Glover beat me, and he beat my buddy. I knew that I had to let him by, but I'll tell you this. On Monday morning, I went to Yamaha and told them that they had to pay me the bonus money for the championship. Now, Bob loved you, and he's, of course, always a controversial guy. And when he likes you, and when he doesn't, I guess, he doesn't. On August 14th, 1977 at San Antonio, Texas, Keith McCarty holds up the sign, let Brock by, and you guys got 240 points at the end of the day. Brock wins, and it gave him the overall and thus the championship. What was the atmosphere like in your pit area that day, either before or after that race? Because there had to be a lot of calculating going on and people trying to figure out what was happening. So tell me, let's go back there for a minute and tell me what was happening either before that second moto or how much chaos ensued after it was over.
Yeah, well, that's really funny. But I'll tell you from the very beginning. I'll never forget the morning before the race, and Bob. Obviously, everyone knows Bob and Brock. They didn't always see eye to eye. Putting it mildly, maybe. But no, they were competitors, and I can't blame anyone. They're, even though you're on a team, you're still there to win, right?
Yes.
And sometimes team politics are a pain. You do have to kind of, even move over for a guy that you may not love, So, but Bob, this is a really funny story. Bob in the morning came to me. He goes, And it was really crazy because he kind of said it. He goes, he says, just beat him, right? So I don't have to do this. So obviously, everyone knows what you don't even have to talk about it, right?
Yeah.
If you have brains in your head, you don't have to be told to stop, move over, let the guy by, right? And Bob isn't stupid, so he knew. But I think the sign was just a little bit of a mistake.
Well, yeah.
But and Bob really literally came to me and said that, and I said I appreciate it. But what happened was that day was in the old days in the Nationals. There were only 6 or 7, sometimes 8. There weren't 12 nationals. Sometimes there was only 10 or 8, at the time.
Yes.
And if you weren't riding a 125, let's say you were focused on a 250 championship or 500. Well, you could go ride a 125 if you had an open weekend. You could go jump into the nationals. So that weekend, Burgett shows up. I think Cars Makers, Mike Bell, all the guys, the whole Yamaha crew showed up to ride 125. It was really pretty funny. So, and I can't remember all the guys that did it, but that joined, that were kind of out there to kind of make a little space for the other guys. But you think about it today, and I don't know if that would really happen or not. But it can't happen because I think you can't ride 2 classes
right.
on the same day. But it was a challenge. I got 2 shitty starts. And I kind of blew it, I had to come from behind, and I just both times what was back to my point about riding factory bikes. Suzuki was dead set on me riding I had a modified factory bike at the time. We went from kind of like a factory bike back in '77 to a semi-factory bike with a standard chassis and. It was like a partially factory bike just because, like I was saying, the bike seemed to work better that way. And for this race, so that was an American factory Suzuki bike, and Suzuki convinced me, and they said you have to ride a Gaston Raillet replica, full factory, bike from the GPs, right? So, okay, so they convinced me to do that, and I had to jump on a bike first of all that I was a little uncomfortable with. And it was really stupid, you think about it at the time. Because even though, like I was saying before, you get used to one bike and then you have to try to jump on another one, it really is not easy to do.
Yeah.
And I felt really uncomfortable on that bike the whole day. And it was really that was part of the mistake as well, is that I rode a bike that I really wasn't familiar with. And I think that was part of it. And so the other part of it, I just blew it. I had 2 bad starts. I did come up, and I came back up, to the top few positions there, but not close enough. And I was looking at being my. It was really funny because the atmosphere in the pits is like everybody was, Bob was so upset he literally rode off into the
to the woods there, yeah.
To the woods, and he didn't want to, he couldn't look at me probably or anybody for what he had done because Bob. Not that kind of guy. He just wants to go out and win, right? So,
sure.
And I think I was the only one that was more okay about it than everybody, right? Everybody was worried. I was, come on, it was my fault. I lost the chair, nobody else's, right?
Well,
so
yeah, Dan, but that's there was the politics involved there, and we all know it was what it was. But I find it fascinating that before the race even began that day, that Bob Hanna says you just go out there and kick everybody's ass, so nobody has to get involved in in things that they had to get involved in. And I was wondering I was really wondering about when you come off the track. Is everything all sorted out already? They know that Glover has won?
Well, at first they know that he's won. That's because at the point he won the last race, the last moto. He won the last moto of the. Even though if you tie in points or whatever, it's the last moto finish that determines the outcome, right?
Yeah.
So. I think everybody was kind of okay with it, and then they started thinking about it, right? And then everyone's thinking about, there should be a protest because that we have photos of somebody holding up a signboard and saying "Let Brock by," and because they were worried. Bob was great. He just teased him to the very end, right? And it was just probably freaked him out because he wasn't doing. He just kept going. They're all saying, "It's time to move over," and he wouldn't do it, right?
Yeah.
So then that's hence the signboard, right? It came up.
Yeah.
And so anyway, and it's just a technicality, right? Bob was probably going to do it anyway. They didn't need to put up the sign. So he kind of forced them into making themselves look like a little foolish about it. But, it's team stuff, and it really doesn't really. It should have. Bob would have probably done it without the sign, but he just was waiting, and it really showed those guys. It was kind of funny. I thought it was really funny. Literally a few days later, although I missed the title, having the title and a bonus, but the rest of it I was okay with. As a competitor, like a guy like Bob Hanna, how can you ever say anything negative about a guy that is competitive like Bob? He's a guy that wanted to win. He gave it 100%, and he did incredible. So I never really could hold him a guy that is just kind of like me in a way. That's out there to win, and Glover the same. I never felt anything ill towards Brock. It was his fault. What's he going to do? He fell right into it. It's great.
Everybody's getting paid to do. Everybody's getting paid to do a job, and they're out there to do it. And
and today Brock and I are real good friends, and Bob and I get along great. So it's not whenever I see him, he's busy all the time. He's a busy guy outside. I see Brock a lot at the races all over the world.
Yeah.
So and Brock and I have had a great relationship.
Well.
Yeah, I know. It's funny, the next day in the office at Suzuki, I remember a couple days later, they were still kind of, not sure what to do, but they didn't want to get into this big battle or fight, publicly. I think the manufacturers at the time, especially the Japanese, were really careful about their image,
yes.
like any company would, and they didn't want to get into this, battle over it. And they know I wasn't pushing it. I didn't go out there and start, complaining about it to them or anything like that. So I think that they just decided to move on.
Yeah.
As well as I did. Yeah.
And you all did, and you all went on to have absolutely, amazing careers. And But
it's a great story, though. I mean, it really is. There's a lot more to it than what we were talking about, but I think it's going to be in the long run because they're still talking about it, right?
Hey, look, Dan, you know what? One thing is for sure. This morning you shared with us something I'm sure that nobody, I know I didn't, ever knew, was that Hannah said to you before the race even started, go out there and kick ass and just win the race. And yeah. I'm sure nobody could know about that except you, and I think it's just wonderful that you were able to share that with us. So...
yeah, thanks.
And that's that. And before we move on to your 500cc national championship, I had one of my favorite people send me a message, and he wanted me to ask you about when he used to fly you around in a plane to the nationals. Of course, I'm talking about Preston Petty.
Yeah.
How often did Preston fly you to some races, and what was that like?
Well, during the Trans Am events, actually. That's where I think the first time it happened. Maybe it was at one of the nationals later. But anyway, yeah, he gave me a ride back to I think at the time it was up in Ketchum when I was living there in Sun Valley, or Ketchum, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, so I started hitching rides with President. He's such a great guy, and such a down-to-earth guy. And I was interested in a little bit in flying, and never ended up flying or anything like that. But the only time I flew with some other guys a little bit. But so I got a great story. It was really funny. I was probably 20 years old or so, and flying back east somewhere, Virginia, I can't remember. And Preston gets in he had as an aero commander, and we're flying, and we flew for maybe a half hour, and he says to me, he goes, I'm going to take a nap. He goes, so just take the controls, keep your eyes open, and if you see any other planes, let me know. Just keep your eyes open for, I never flew a plane a day in my life, never did whatever,
Did he go to sleep, Dan? Did he really go to sleep?
Yeah, he could show basically how, everything was, it was dialed in, the plane, pretty much flew by itself.
Right.
He still, but for hours, fly, he says, just let me know, wake me up here and there along the way. That was kind of funny. That was Preston. He did that, he just kicked back, go to sleep, and let me sit there and
Wow.
keep
That
my
is
eyes open the whole time.
that
But
is
yeah, it was really great memories.
that
He was he's such a character.
yeah. When was the last time you saw Preston?
I saw him at an event out at was it Pala maybe a couple years ago?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did a thing for him.
Yeah.
Was it Pala or Pala?
I don't know, but I know they had some kind of
Can't go-
fundraiser down there for him, and people have been trying to help him out,
Yeah.
and he certainly deserves that. So, in '79, Danny, you won a 500cc national championship for Suzuki. You took 3 firsts that year, 4 seconds, and in 11 races, you were always in the top 10. When did
Right.
you learn? When did you learn from Suzuki that they were moving you up to the 500s, or was that kind of the premier thing for nationals and something you always wanted to do?
Yeah. At that time, yeah, it seemed like it was kind of the premier class, and it was changing though. The 250 started becoming more premier than the 500 class.
Mm-hmm.
But I really liked riding the big bikes. I really enjoyed 500s. I liked getting on it, having extra power, and I don't know. I just like to have that extra weight. I felt pretty good on 500 big bikes, and so yeah. I don't know why they put me on a 500, but I think that I just showed some interest in it, and they needed somebody. They had Kent Howardson in the 250 class,
Yeah.
and so they wanted to cover everything pretty well. And I was tired of riding the 125 class after the couple seasons. So yeah, that was 78 was my first year on a 500 class, and again, at that time motorcycles were going through a lot of evolution, right?
Yes.
And it's kind of funny because so the Suzuki in 77 to the 78 bike went to 12 and a half or nearly 13 inches of travel. I mean, I think over 13 inches of travel. And the bike was really tall in 78, really kind of hard to ride. And but still, I did okay. I won some nationals. Got my feet wet a little bit, and then the 79 bike really was great. I mean, that was an awesome motorcycle. They dropped the suspension down a little bit lower for the next season in '79, and the bike was just awesome. It was. I just think even today that it would work. I'd love to be able to ride that '79 Suzuki again, just for fun. But the power was great. It's so easy to ride. Great power. The bike handled and steered really well. You could just drive any berm, you just felt comfortable in any line you took. It didn't climb out, didn't climb in. It just stayed exactly where you wanted it to. And the power was so tractable, good from not too much. Just a great power band. Where you just short shifted it. You had a lot of power, and it revved out a little bit, pretty much, but just so linear power compared to any of the other bikes I had ridden. So the bike was really amazing that year. And it was really fun because every year, you'd go from one year to the next, and they would change the bike. The very next year, I think after '79, they had that the full floater,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And I was like, oh my God, the bike was just working perfect. Now we have to race this thing, So, God.
So
But
now,
anyway, that.
yeah, it's you apparently love the bike. You won a lot of races on it. You wrapped up a national championship on it. Being you had ridden 125s, 250, and 500s for Suzuki all those years. Who were some guys you really used to dice with, or who was another rider that always seemed to be nipping at your heels?
Well, it's just it's always different. But Mike Bell was his bike Bell, Chuck's son. You had Nick. Well, there's there's so many different. Rex Staten was out there.
Staten, sure.
So it was just mostly, I think. I was trying to think of all the guys. Mainly, I was just focused on Mike Bell in '79. At that time, because Mike was, I think, the most. I really didn't even think of anybody else. I think it was just mostly Mike.
Oh, okay.
In '79, because Mike was, he was really, really, coming. I mean, he got obviously better and better, but Mike was a tough competitor, and I could have easily lost it to Mike. Unfortunately, there were enough sand tracks out there at the time. I really loved riding in the sand, I think the sand tracks really kind of helped me, you know, like Southwick and St. Petersburg. So yeah, I think that was the for me, the equalizer was a sand track.
Yeah, and I think, Dan, your first national win on the 500 was at Southwick, which is, of course, as sandy as you can get.
Right,
So,
and I really liked it. I think I rode a lot, like in SoCal on sand, and I trained a lot out in Yucca Valley, and we had sand tracks out there. So I got along with the sand pretty well, although I wasn't from Florida. But it's really funny. I was always thinking that you go to Florida and you jump in with some of the local Florida guys were pretty good, decent at the time. There was Kessler.
Yep.
He was pretty strong. He was always on the edge of becoming a top guy.
Yep.
Mickey was great. So yeah.
Well, let me ask you this: you were with Suzuki from '76 to '80. You did a lot with them. Were there any other offers? I mean, obviously Honda and Yamaha came afterward, but were there any other offers to go ride for another factory during your Suzuki years?
Yeah, one time Kawasaki. Jimmy Weiner actually tried to get me on a Kawasaki,
Mm-hmm.
and I went out to that track there up in the hills down there. What was it called? Not El Toro, but El Toro area. There was a track up in the hills. Anyway, it was a racetrack, and I remember testing there the bike, and yeah, it was just Kawasaki. But I was really never interested. I was really just trying to be, in those days it was about loyalty, and Kawasaki had money too, so I wasn't really ever thinking about the money at the time, because if you think about it back in those days, so contracts were, 50, 60, 70, 80, maybe $100,000. That was it, right?
Yeah.
And so $5,000 or $10,000 is not, or 20,000 isn't really worth upsetting anybody or changing unless you were on a really inferior bike. And I felt at the time Suzuki still had all the knowledge and all the from all the past experience and championships they won from Gaston, Roger DeCoster, all that era. There's still bleeding over into that time when I was racing, and so there was really no reason for me to want to quit at the time, because I thought it was kind of stupid. Just for $10,000 or $20,000,
Right.
So.
And you could probably make that up maybe in money, in purse money, on the right bike.
Absolutely. So. A couple, 2 or 3 races or whatever, championship. It just wasn't worth it, and I just think at the time that if it's a lot of money, that's different, But nobody was offering from 80 or 100,000 to 300,000 at the time, right? So.
Right. Yeah. And in '81, Danny, you were chosen to be part of a team that almost didn't really exist, and you went on to make history in the Motocross the Nations. You, Chuck's son, Donnie Hansen, and Johnny O'Mara went out and defeated the best riders in the world. What do you recall leading up to that event? Was it Roger who personally contacted you, or how did that all come together for you?
Well, that's pretty good. How the whole thing, I think, started was I had actually personally back to just talking about. I hate talking about this, but at the beginning of the season in '81 at Honda, literally at Saddleback at a practice, some small local race, CMC. Yeah. I did the start at the top of the hill, came down Bonsai Hill, and at the bottom of Bonsai, the old track used to re-enter the track. It was a left-hand sweeping turn that got back onto before Webco Hill, and and Saddleback, they grade in the morning as these big ruts. I mean, these big gnarly like berms, concave berms. So after you come down Bonsai Hill, you're re-entering the track. You'd cross over that berm where the track came back, entered the track. Anyway, I hit that thing, bottomed out on the Honda, and rode the front wheel all the way to the next turn. It seemed like it, and then finally I unloaded my hands out, did Superman, and then I just snapped my wrist, dislocated my wrist, and dislocation is pretty serious, and I broke a couple of small bones in my wrist, and that was before the season even got started. So I was out. I was literally out of Honda before it even had started. And so I just, went to work, training, trying to rehab, and they wanted to operate, and I said, no, I'm not going to operate it. I'd be a year out. So I literally, maybe after 3 weeks in this cast, and they wanted to put me in a full shoulder cast, operate, and they all said no. So I took it all out, and I just started training and riding, and maybe only, 6 weeks after that, and I still have broken bones in my wrist still today. So I just kept working through it, and I had to get back out there. I knew that because that's a career-ending type injury. When you're out for a year, then you have to, try to get a ride again. It would be pretty tough. So I just kept working at it and got back out to the Nationals, missed the whole Supercross series. Pretty much I went out and did one or two, I think, on the Honda, just riding around pretty much on number 17. And so then I went back out to the Nationals and started off and actually won a few by the very end of that season. And so I was kind of getting back up to speed and learning how to kind of ride with a hurt wrist. And so at the end of the season, obviously everybody I think knows the story. Well, not everybody, but America was almost, none of the manufacturers were interested to go to Europe to send their, usually each manufacturer would try to at least one or two from each team send their best guy out. And everyone was kind of, no one was winning the title anymore. It was getting complicated, not easy to manage. And there was loss of interest just because no one had ever won, I think, primarily. And so Roger goes, no, we can't do this. This is crazy. We'll put the team together. We'll go there just to represent America because we've got to be there, right? Yes. So that basically was the plan. And Roger just came to us and asked, "You guys want to go?" Of course, we'd want to go. I mean, it was a great opportunity. And at the time, which a lot of people don't realize, is Johnny O'Mara was coming up. I mean, he was on fire. Donnie Hansen was on fire. He was always very, very fast. He was starting to come around. I mean, he was there. And then as far as myself and Chuck's son, Chuck was coming up. I think he had won the title.
He was just coming off a national championship, yeah.
Right. So if you looked at it all, it was perfect because it got young guys on fire, and they weren't held back by any preconceived notions about the politics from what went on before. I wanted to go to Europe. That was always my plan for many years before this. I always wanted, every few years I'd ask Suzuki, or every year I'd ask them, hey, you guys got an opening to race in Europe? And they kind of laugh at me, Americans will never be able to win in Europe. No, keep kind of like, they claim that they would look and ask for me, but anyway, I don't know if it ever happened, but, just stay in America and race in America, basically. So for me, it was like, this is a great opportunity. I get over there, show what we can do. And sure enough, the rest is history. I mean, we were just so excited to be there, all of us as a team. And as a team, it worked. Roger being managing the whole thing. We had Dave Arnold there, which is great, and Brian Lennis, and so we had and Jeff Spencer was actually working with. He was one of the top trainers at the time, and so we had it all together. A great organization. We went there as a real team, and that's kind of why we won. A really quick story is that if it had been fragmented into different teams like it was, we would never have won. I mean, just a little thing is like we're at this track one day. We have the bikes over there. The American bikes were flown over, and Roger goes, "You know what, Bruce? Before Lummel, someone needs to go do a 45-minute moto on one of our bikes because the tank sizes are a little bit different." Okay. So I said, I'll go out and do a 45-minute moto. This is a few days before the Lummel race. Literally, a lap or two before the finish, we ran out of gas. Or I did, or both of us. Maybe two of us was doing the moto. We're out there, Johnny or somebody, Chuck and I don't know. We ran out of gas on the last lap. So right away we were hustling, running around. Roger was trying to find tanks off 500 from Andre Mahler's, team, whatever. I think they had extra tanks. So we had to throw 500cc tanks on the bikes. I mean, we would never even won the race.
You would have
so
been.
That's the kind of experience you need to have as a team. So if not, we would have been out there and we would have run out of gas. Lommel was heavier and deeper sand than the track we went out to ride on, literally. And race conditions, you're really on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to simulate real race conditions. You always can go out and try to ride in practice, but you never can practice like you actually race in the sand, on the sand track.
Wow.
So, because you just pull a plug and the thing's all the way, the bike is full throttle, every turn, every ounce, it's just wide open, right? In deep sand, you're just pinned literally pinned. And so you suck so much more fuel. We would never have won the first race, ever, if Roger didn't make us go out and do that. And that's the fact.
Wow, that's something we didn't know too. I mean, the gas tank thing and your wrist injury, how you went out and rode that week, and you weren't really 100% when you think about it. I mean,
prior to that, that all happened. My wrist injury was at the beginning of the year, but I got better and better and better. Won some nationals, motos, last moto, a couple events, I think, and this is just my opportunity to do that. But yeah, it was such a great experience. It was nothing like riding with Donnie, Johnny, and Chuck. Chuck had actually more experience than some of us racing in Europe, and he was part of the whole process, So we all just did great, and it was awesome. We just all had that bond. I think ever since that race, that day, it was just mind-boggling. The look on the face of all the people, in Belgium especially, to win a title,
yeah,
was, so it was really one of the highlights of my career that day. It's hard to replace for it. And even beat out, winning a title. It was just phenomenal.
Would you say, Dan, that victory that day really gave you the confidence to say, I'm as fast as anybody in the world, and I'm getting to Europe one way or the other?
Yeah, that's what it was, and that's what just it convinced me that I could do it,
Yeah.
So, and really, honestly, I was kind of in the back of my mind for many years, wanted to go race in Europe. I always thought that was the pinnacle of it. I just wanted to win a title and then go to Europe. I really, honestly, not someone that was interested in win 2-time, 3-time, 4-time, 5-time, the same thing over and over. I was tired of already in a few years of holidaying hotels and just the same thing. I needed to be motivated by a little adventure and a little of the unknown is what kind of motivated me, because once you figured it out, to me, it was a lot more to it than just getting to the race it's kind of like after just a couple of years, routine to me is, I don't like routine. And that's what it had become just after a few years in America. And I'm all, oh God, I got to win a title and now I got to go win a real title, a world title, right?
Yeah.
At the time,
Well,
and that's kind of was my mindset. And when the opportunity came, I was going to jump on it. And like I said, I had tried a little bit before, but never had worked out. And so that was the opportunity. So when I was there, what I did was I saw someone at the event that knew Heikki Mikkola, and I said, hey, could you put the feelers out if they're looking for somebody? And I did that on my own.
At Yamaha?
To someone who knew someone at Yamaha. I didn't do it directly myself.
No, I'm saying you said it to someone because you
Right.
wanted, you would go to Yamaha just to get there.
Right, because I heard they may have been looking for a guy.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Honda and Yamaha were the best two right then at the time, right?
Yes.
I felt Suzuki was still pretty good too as well, but I just had kind of thought I was not desperate, but it just, the opportunity had popped up, and I said, go feel out so they did, and they said they'd like to talk with you. And I go, holy shit, this is awesome. Okay, so, and literally, I had a contract ready within a day. And Heikki signed me literally within like 2 or 3 days. It was done.
After the Donations race?
After the Donations, right. And, for me, it was really hard because he made a phone call to Roger. And Roger, now, and it was 2 reasons it was hard for me. One is I knew that Honda after that year, for 82, 83, I knew it was coming on the Hondas. 82, 83, 84 bikes were sick, right?
Yeah.
They were hard. They were going to be the bikes to have. From that point on, they were. And Roger offered me to race in America before I left. I had an opportunity to come back on a Honda, and a Honda that was really the beginning of a dominating era for Honda. So I had to kind of give that up, and I knew if I gave that up, I would give up, possibility of ever coming back to America. So I had a lot to lose. And I knew all that. I was aware of that, so I had to call Roger on the phone, turn down Honda, turn down, Roger, and it was hard for me to make that call, and tell Roger that I'm going to move on, So that's what I did.
Now, was it? You moved? Did you move to Europe at that point, Dan? Were you based like in France that entire season, or how did that all work? And what were some of the difficult hurdles you had to clear once?
Yeah. You love this story. No, right away. It's great. So, amazing. Roger. He right away he offers me his house. Hey, if you need a place to live, you can stay at my house in Belgium. It's like, are you kidding me? Roger's so great. So helpful, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, wow, a dream, perfect. Everything was great, So I did that. I basically, right away, I moved to Belgium. I rented a car. I bought a car, and I was, for a short term, living at Roger's house. And Yamaha had found out about it and said, we don't think it's a really good idea. And this is the truth. And no kidding, it's not a good idea, right? But I'm professional. He's professional. Of course, for us, we could do it, but maybe if someone had found out that didn't like it, it might not have been a good idea. So, no problem. So I ended up just a few miles away in a town called Keerbergen. Keerbergen. I rented a house. And I lived there for actually 82 and 83. I rented it for two and a half years. And I found a local guy, supplied the house full of furniture, bought a car, earlier actually, before it. And then that was it. I was all in. And I knew if you're going to really be serious to win a title, I think, you can't just fly back and forth. You had to be there in the middle of it. If I wanted to, I felt like if I wanted to run, I had to race in the mud. I had to get used to tracks that are in Europe, and they were so different than America. So I said, the only way I'm going to learn is if I stay here. So I right away I got a manager, which DeCoster, Sonia Van Tom was his manager, became my manager as well. And she got me set up, and I started doing every international races, sometimes twice a week in Belgium, in France. I raced far more international races than I ever did GPs.
Wow.
And it is insane. You're jumping in a car, driving from one track on Saturday to another international track on Sunday, and you do two 30-minute motos, and then the next day 2 30-minute motos, right? So you become a racing fool. And you're racing deep sand tracks in the rain, mud, tracks in France, in the slimy, deep ruts up to your ears. And it's like, this is insane. What am I doing here, So I just felt like I went with it. I learned a lot. I won a few races, did a couple good motos, but, you just can't go to Europe and race against the Belgians at that, in America, and just jump into their world and win a race in Holland when, I remember the very first international race I did in France, in Belgium. It was like it was like a nightmare because after the start, it was like the guy from last is just as fast as the guy in first. The times are hardly any different. So,
Yeah.
and because you have all the top guys from all over doing these races. Sometimes, and they're all from the same, all the 125, 250, 500 guys are all from 4 or 5 different countries piled into one class. Think about that.
Yeah. It's like a Grand Prix. It's just like it's...
Oh, no, it's more intense.
It's more intense.
Everyone's in your class.
Yeah.
Yeah, except the young 125 guys, right? So,
right.
So you're racing against guys like, Everts and I don't know at the time. I could go on. Van der Ven and from Holland and Joe Bay and what's his name, Andre Vromans and these sand specialist guys, So the race starts and the sand, the way it's raining, the track is. They're going to cancel this, right? No, they don't cancel races, and so literally all you see is a deep mush about 2 feet deep of deep sand, black sand, wheels just full throttle, 20 guys in front of you, crossing in front of you in ruts that you have. If you don't pin it, you just might as well pull off the track. And it's just like, wow, this is insane, So it was really a great eye-opener, and it actually really helped me to get to learn because I knew that if the GPs started, which started later in the year, the weather starts to get better. And everyone promised me that the GPs will be better because it'll be May, June, July, August, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to be in the good summer months. The track's going to dry out. It'll be more in your favor, which it turned out to be true. But you still have that 1 or 2 sand races that could rain, and you have to be ready for it. So that was my idea: is to get over, jump into it, and it turned out to be a great, and I really enjoyed going to Europe. I like I was saying, I like a little adventure and things being different. So definitely was.
Did you cross paths with Brad Lackey while you were over there in '82?
Yeah, well, Brad at that time, he had been there for so many years, and I got there towards the end of his career.
Yeah.
That year, and he was done kind of doing international events. He'd done all that I had done. He'd done, he lived through that. He had practiced. So after 7 or 8, 9, 10 years.
9 years, yeah.
He was, I don't blame him. I don't think I could have lasted more than 2 or 3 during all those races. And I did ran into Brad a few times, but I went to watch him win the world title a few weeks before I raced.
Yes.
And I was just as excited as everybody else for him to win. And it was just such an exciting moment to see him win. I never thought that of course I would have loved to have been first, but he was a really honest guy, and he actually had said to me that, Danny, he goes, I had to say that, I think he told me this, that watching you coming in and being in contention for the title kind of put a little pressure on me. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool that he said that. I don't know if I'm just imagining this, but I really believe he said that to me one day off the side,
Yeah, well,
and,
yeah.
Now I got the pressure on me, right? So it's like double down. I got to do it now, right? So, oh man.
Did you ever when you got there in '82? I mean, of course, nobody knows what the outcome is going to be, but Brad is doing really well halfway through the GP season. So are you. Is it in the back of your mind ever that you might become the first American world champion even before Brad?
No, I never. Yeah, of course I thought that, but I had to stay focused and keep training, and because that was a lot. It was really mentally, it was a tough thing. Probably the hardest thing was the last building up to that. The last 2 or 3 weeks. It was to be because Brad had won, and I wanted to be the first 250 world champion. And it's like, oh my God, this is getting intense. I mean, can you imagine not sleeping at night? I mean, I would never. Any championship is hard to win.
Yep.
Never take that away from anybody that's won any title. It doesn't matter. From a local, national title to the world title. It doesn't matter whether it be a national or Supercross championship. You have so much time and energy, wrapped up in the winning that event, that championship, that It's a tough thing to be. It's hard to be in that position, and some guys can handle it better than others. And so yeah, it was great. I was after that. I can never forget. After I won the championship, how great a feeling satisfaction gave was great.
Now, you defeated the great George Jobey in '82,
Yeah.
who had previously won a 250 world title in 1980. He finished second in '81. Now you returned to Europe in '83 to defend your title, and you finished second behind Jobey. Was the second year, was the second year there tougher than the first, or was it more?
No, I think it was the other way around. The first year was tough. The first year was tough because just the unknown.
Yeah.
Then I like the feeling of getting a little bit comfortable. I don't like to be too comfortable, like I said before, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to be a little on edge, and I need to be to do well. I need to be out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
It makes me better.
What?
So, but Joe, then at the time there's Case Vanderven, Jorbay, Dave Watson, Kenny Gardner. There were a lot of great guys at the time, and I had no idea. I just said, no, I'm just going to go out and see how I can do. And it just things started falling into place. And then to be honest, it was one weekend George fell on his elbow and kind of hurt his elbow, and which gave me an opportunity to get more points on him. And then he was back again the next weekend. So I think that was a turning point for me. So, but still, I had to still finish it out and win the championship. There were other good guys, and you still have to ride around the track. You still can't fall. You still can't break down. No matter how easy the lineup might look, it's still not easy to win the championship.
No.
I don't care, or race. And I don't care if there's nobody out there, only you alone. You still have to get around the track without crashing and getting hurt or something stupid happening. So you can't take it away from at any time in history about the level of competition, because you still have to get the job done and win. So, but to me, the first year was the year I shouldn't have won. The second year was the one I should have won. and the meaning is that the second race I actually did. I think I performed better than I did the first year. Honestly, I won races. Everything was looking perfect. And then in France, at Chateau de Loire, I lost 2 motos. And the 2 motos I broke down were from the start of the race. At the very first lap, I went maybe 200 yards. My bike runs. It just stops.
This is in '83, Dan?
Yeah, in '83.
Okay.
And I go, oh my gosh, this is not good. That's 25 points, right? You can't lose 25 points to Jobey, right?
Right.
So, they got, and so next moto, they tore my bike. They replaced everything on the bike, everything you possibly imagine. And second moto, exactly in the same spot. The same thing happened twice. 50 points gone, So that, I don't really talk about it. There's no excuses. It's just what happens racing. But it would have been nice to have those extra 50 points at the year, because I ended up closing it down a lot closer to that than at the end. So to me, I personally, as a personal side, I won. To me, I did better. I was a better racer the second year than I was the first year in Europe.
Did you have a relationship with Jobey off the track? Were you guys friendly?
Yeah,
or?
I should have loved. We're running out of time, but I could talk forever about George.
Dan, I'm not running out of time.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
No, George and I, on the track, we were fierce competitors. I mean, we grumbled at each other. We did everything in the book to try to trick each other, our teams.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we were fierce competitors. But after, we got along great. We ate together. We of course there's that little tension in there, but he, George is a character, And I had to keep pressure on him a little bit, and him on me too, because, even though we were nice to each other, we also tried to keep a little tension on each other. I never really wanted to keep that off of him, I wanted him to know that I was there to beat him, right? So,
yeah.
But at the same time, we knew how to be good to each other. We ate together, we hung out, went to parties together. And the night of the championship, actually in '82, George was there. We just had an amazing time. Him and Mikola and myself and Torsten Hallman showed up. It was kind of cool to have Mikola and Torsten Hallman at that time.
What track?
At your party.
What track did you clinch the champ? Dan, what track did you clinch the championship on?
It was Vimmerby.
Sweden,
yeah.
Did you race 500 GPs at all, Dan, in '83?
No, I didn't race the 500 class until '84.
Okay, so you're partying with Mikola, Jobé, and Torsten Hallman in Sweden. That's got to be an incredible evening.
Oh yeah, it can't get any better than that, right? So it was really fun, and they all came out to us, and just great time. Yeah, and I'll never forget the party. Jobé and I were doing. We were so wasted, and we're trying to do like stand-up push-ups against the wall. Like you're doing handstand push-ups.
Yeah.
And we're trying to who could outdo more, right? That's funny. We're our shirts off. We're just doing stupid stuff. It was a lot of fun.
I would imagine.
But the vodka was flowing. Seriously.
In '84, you said you raced some 500 GPs?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
On what brand? On Yamaha?
On Yamaha.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had a contract again with Yamaha in '84, but what happened was to race the 250 class again, and what happened was the Yamaha at '83, '84. I don't know if you remember this, but Yamaha and Honda were in a manufacturing battle. They were trying to outproduce more, and there was a little bit of a recession at the time, and the warehouses started backing up full of bikes, and Yamaha couldn't take that kind of, the motorcycle side. Honda had, I think, more money, obviously, at the time. So Yamaha kind of lost the manufacturing battle with Honda at the time. I'm just kind of reading between the lines. I think that's kind of what happened. And anyway, Yamaha basically said, we can't supply you with bikes, to race in the 250 class. So they're going to race production bikes. And I felt like, that's what happened in America. Remember in '83, everyone had to switch to Yamaha, went from factory bikes to production bikes. And then the whole thing kind of fell that way. The whole industry went, the whole thing was, I think it was kind of because of Yamaha, and they wanted to, so that's when they went to the production stuff, I believe, started about that time, a little bit. The Yamaha for sure it happened. They couldn't build factory bikes anymore. And so everybody was racing for Yamaha was racing a production-based factory bike.
Right.
With better cylinders, some rear suspension, and forks. So basically that was it. So no more factory bikes for Yamaha. So I think I was thinking, well, how am I going to race the 250 class against all the factory bikes on a 250? So I'm thinking to myself, I want to, race the 500 class. I personally, I was done. I had to move on, right? Like I said, I was the person that kind of felt like I did what I had to do. I couldn't stay another year in the 250 class. I just couldn't do it on a little bit inferior equipment at the time against all the bikes that were hyper trick. By '84, the bikes were really, really good. The other guy, Kawasaki, Suzuki, and the Hondas, of course. So I just thought that, well, this might be a good opportunity for me to go on the 500 class. And actually, same thing happened else in the 500 class to Håkan Karlqvist. So he was kind of left out in the cold. Only thing Yamaha had done is built 4 bikes, factory bikes, and some spare parts basically enough for one team. It was a 500 class, and so at the time, Hoken had to put together his own team. It was called Lumaca. It was a private team, Lumaca Yamaha. It was this Italian sponsorship thing. So it was kind of like getting serious. Now it was like that was the first time that factories were kind of, having to split up their teams at the time. That's kind of what's happened in the recent years, right over here.
Sure.
But and over there, it really started there too. So Lumaca, Hoken had the factory bikes, and to me, this deal, I just didn't seem. I probably should have done it, but I said no. I'm not gonna race on this Lumaca, even though with the factory bikes. So Yamaha sent me like the American factory-based production bikes, right? That's what I raced, and I had to actually. I had a budget to buy bikes. This is so funny, but I didn't have. If Hoken asked me to race on his team, and I decided not to. So Lindquist, another rider, took the place that I was going to run with, and he ended up riding on the team with Carlquist, and I tried to do it on my own. It was kind of a Yamaha supplied the vehicles and supplied mechanics and supplied a lot of the equipment I needed, but the bikes we had to buy. It was kind of funny, So it's literally that bad. So I raced this I did 4 races, and I was doing quite well actually in Bru, in the French event. Now I'm really kind of getting a little. I could see that with a little more support. So I was asking for some more support from Yamaha. If I could, I'm trying to think back. I'm sorry for this, but if I could, I wanted to continue on with the 500 class, but I needed at this time. I said, trying to get some more support from Yamaha, and Hoken had hurt himself at one of the races, and then I said to Yamaha, I said, Hoken's out. Why don't you give me his full factory bikes, right?
Yeah.
Because now you can imagine at the time in '84, the Kawasaki's that Joe Bay's on, the Hondas that Malherb's on, and these bikes, were just. And Andre Roman's on the Suzuki. They were just another step above a production-based factory bike the Yamaha had, right?
Yes.
And and I was running in 5th, 6th, 7th in that place, probably kind of where I belonged. The first year in a 500 class. Did some a few top 8 finishes, somewhere around there. Anyway, but I needed more. I need better equipment. And anyway. They wouldn't give it to me, so I said, "Okay, I'm done." They said, "No, don't quit. Go to the next race." If I don't get the bikes, I'm not going. And that was it.
Over.
And I was really, I was over. And I just, that was me. And I kind of look back. I regret it. I should have probably raced with Hoken on his team on those full factory. Remember the aluminum frame Yamahas? It was that bike. I think you saw. That was the first aluminum frame bike. I think at the time. 500, and I probably should have stayed, but my ego probably got in the way, and I was impatient at the time, and I just moved on, and I quit.
Hey Dan, I don't usually do this. I don't usually do this, but I'm going to do it now. I just checked I just checked the live feed, and I'm seeing people commenting, and I wouldn't do this for just anybody, but he's a mutual friend of ours. Scott Cox is watching, and Scott says, have Danny tell the story about Joe Bay and the Russian uniform. I don't know what that means. But
okay, well, yeah, I guess if you have time, I can talk about that.
Dan, I've got plenty of time, and I've got at least 10 more questions. So let's. This is
really amazing. Thanks, Scott. Scott's my memory. He always hits me up when I'm doing social media stuff. He knows my memory's pretty bad. But there's a Russian GP in '82.
Yeah.
And the very first time I was in Russia, and at the time in Russia, when you went to Russia, you had to stay in tourist hotels, and they were you couldn't go out. There weren't private hotels. There weren't Radissons and Holiday Inns and You know,
Yeah.
there was nothing but just Russian tourist hotels. So anybody visiting Russia had to either was going to Russia from the U.S. especially to go see a relative. You were Russian, you had a relative, or you were doing some kind of a diplomatic thing, so you'd stay in these hotels. And so anyway, when you checked into when they drove you straight from the airport in this bus, they took you to the hotel, you had to check in, and then on every floor of the hotel, there's like 3 or 4 levels, they had somebody on the floor in a chair watching that you checked into your hotel room and went in and out. So they kept track of everybody. You had to stay at the hotel. And so, you know, and mostly outside of the hotel you had guards, and they were military guards. And I was out in sometime a couple days before the race, one day before the race, I saw this Russian soldier. And the soldier standing there, and he was dressed, and I saw, and I said, hey, to the Russian guy, I kind of make a smile at him. We were trying to communicate. Didn't speak a word of English. I didn't speak any Russian. But he had this really cool belt with a hammer, a brass belt, square shaped with a hammer and sickle, and a star.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, that'd be awesome to get a belt from this guy somehow. So I showed him money. I showed him a $100 bill, and his eyes lit up, and he knew what a dollar was.
Yeah.
And it really, I kind of learned that from being in Czechoslovakia before that a little bit, because they were a little bit lesser, not quite as tight as Russia at the time. But anyway, so he points to his watch and he said, come here at this time at the hotel parking lot, and I'll, you know. So I showed up there anyway. He's there. He's got a paper bag. He gives me his entire uniform, and I gave him the $100. I'm all, holy shit, I got a Russian, you know. So, and he's like sweating bullets, right? So anyway, that night there, before the event in Russia, they usually have all the local dignitaries come from the military, from, I don't know, politics, how it works in Russia, but they had a big, giant sit-down dinner, probably 200-300 people in this giant banquet room, and it's mostly, you know, diplomats, military people, and then the riders and teams were all supposed to be in there. And so Jobé had seen me about an hour or two before the event started, and he says, hey, Danny, you got to wear that, you know what, that thing's awesome. You got to wear the uniform down to the thing. I'm all, are you kidding me, George? That would be, no, I'm not going to, are you crazy? That's
suicide.
An American, like, that'd be insulting, right, if I walked down there. And I said, no way, I'm not going to do that, George. He goes, no, you got to do it. And, you know, because there's press around, there's all the, you know, he thinks it would be funny. Yeah, right. I don't know. So George says, I'll do it. So I give the suit to George. George literally walks down the stairs with a full Russian suit and does the march, you know, with the arms out, walks into the banquet room right before it starts.
Oh, my God.
And I'm just going, holy shit, I can't believe this. All the guys at the table, these you know, high-level military guys stood up and said, basically, where did you get this? To George. They all started, like, going around him, right?
Yeah.
And George points at me.
Oh, man.
His finger, he goes from him. So, anyway, so I'm standing there, and I can't believe he did it. You know, he just totally burned me, right? So we're kind of both in trouble at this point. So the Russians come to me and say, where did you get this suit? Where did you get this suit? I go, oh, I bought it. I bought it, this one Russian, the translator, a military guy. And I said, I bought it. The guy was offering it to me. And I said, oh, great. I love Russia. We just admire Russia. I just started flipping it around. And America, if I had this thing, it would be awesome. Yeah. And kind of in America, this is like something that we kind of do. You know, if you're in the Army and you buy someone's suit, it's like saying, hey, I really love you guys. So basically, so I had to come up with this bullshit excuse. And so anyway, it was right now. I'm sitting down at the table with these Russians, and they're all questioning me where I got it, who the guy was. And they were taking notes down, because on the inside of the belt there's names, on the hat there's names, on the pants there's names. And I'm thinking, oh shit, now I got this guy who's headed to the gulag, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm just sweating bullets too, you know. Now Jobé's completely clean, he's off of it. Now they're on top of me, asking me all these questions. So I was really polite, and I was explaining to the guy, I go, look, I bought it from a guy. I thought, I love your country. I love Russia, you know, on and on. And so anyway, I started talking with the guy. We're exchanging stories, and he got warming up to me, and finally, maybe half hour later, he goes, "Hey, I'll give you the belt buckle if you give me something." So I took him up to my room, and I said, "Oh, what a relief." So I gave him some T-shirts and hats, JT hats, and some shirts and T-shirts and things, and he was stoked. He handed me the belt, so I kept the belt, and that was nice, and it ended the story. So we were out of the hot water.
Oh man!
But it was really kind of intense for a while because it's kind of I respect the military, anywhere, and I didn't really want to get the guy in trouble. But it was really funny. Anyway,
well, I
got a kick out of that.
I want to thank.
I had to drink some vodka for that. Too.
I bet.
Shot the night before the race, and they had a couple shots of vodka. But actually, it kind of loosened me up because you're in Russia, right? And it's kind of strange, and then you have to go do a race at GP and everything. And shoot, there's nothing wrong with a couple shots of vodka make you relax and sleep.
Yeah, I guess, and I want to thank Scott Cox for sending in that question. I seldom look at the monitor for any kind of questions or anything. And I just happened to glance at it, and there it was. That is an incredible story, Danny. You went on to,
and I still have the belt buckle too. So
that's awesome. I mean, in '85, you went on to ride Huskies, Dan.
Right. Well, after the '84 thing, so I just came back home. I was home doing nothing, and Mark Blackwell at Suzuki basically made an offer to come race. He had found a sponsor called Autolite, which everyone knows, and that was okay. That's kind of cool. And he goes, "We want to, start developing Husqvarna." They had a plan to kind of, and I said, "Okay, yeah, I'm game for it, right? Who's underdog motorcycle, and I'm not doing anything, so." I've been out of U.S. for 3 years, so I jumped on that thing and was we were just doing a lot of. I was going to Sweden to work, and Sweden really was going to try to do something with that brand and bring it back, and they really did try to make an effort for a while. I went to Sweden and did some testing and went back to the U.S. Just kind of going back and forth, and I wasn't really thinking about the racing so much as it was the development part of it, So, and then, so I I did a couple nationals, and then I flew to Sweden, and I did a couple GPs also, and Sweden, Finland, and Finland actually had a pretty good race on one bike. I kind of got a bad start, and Joe Bay was riding the 500 class, and then you can imagine the bikes were just awesome in the '85, and I was on this pile. I should say pile, but it was kind of a pile, the Husky. But it was a sand track, and it's not all about power and things, so I kind of kept motoring around, and I kept going, and wow, I'm starting to feel, and I see Joe Bay, and it's like, oh, God, he's like a few guys in front of me, and it just, like, put fire under my ass. And then I just kept following him through the pack, and we worked up, I think it was Malherbe, Boers, Thorpe, Joe Bay and I passed Joe Bay, I think, I can't remember, but anyway, I finished the top 5 on that thing. Anyway, so that was kind of made me feel like, okay, I kind of did something anyway that year, and then headed back to California to do a national at Colorado, and I was playing around practicing, and it's this big road jump. I was doing this double over this, fourth gear wide open up the hill. I was off the track, goofing around, over a road jump up to land up on top thing.
Yeah.
And I freaking hit neutral, and I went upside down and obviously flipped over the bars and piled into the side of the hill and broke my femur. So that was definitely the end of my career at that time.
As far as motocross goes, but you also wrote a 6-day trials event in Germany too, and you got a gold medal.
Yeah, well, at the yes, I was kind of I always loved off-road stuff. I grew up there riding in the off-road, and I at the time I figured, to back up, now that you mentioned this, I have to kind of back up a little
bit. Sure,
but
take your time.
So in '83 and '84 and '85, after I had won the title and I saw what was happening in Europe, I was watching all this rallies going on. And Gaston Rayet had switched over to doing these rallies, and he started saying, "Hey, Danny, you have to come race some rallies in Africa." Well, I don't know about that, but okay. And then I started seeing it grow and grow, and ahead, and then I saw that, wow, these guys, you know, they have sponsors like Marlboro and Chesterfield and Rothmans and Playboy and BMW, and I'm all, wow, what's going on over here? And so I find out that these guys are making far, at the time, much more than the motocrossers are making, and they're doing 2 races a year. They're doing the Pharaohs Rally in Egypt and Paris Dakar, and there's another smaller race in Morocco. And I go, wow. So I started just finding out what these guys were making, and I was pretty, you know, they're making $600,000-$700,000 a year at that time, when motocrossers, a big contract were probably, you know, in 84, 85 were probably half that. You know?
Sure.
So, and you know how hard motocross is. You're training all year long and working. And I said, well, you know, this would be kind of cool. So, anyway, at that time, I just kind of went on and I playing around. And oh yeah, I remember I was in Los Angeles like 87, and Mark Blackwell. Not Mark Blackwell. I'm sorry. Something is somebody else right now.
Okay.
Mark Johnson, who was working at Kawasaki in 87, said, "Hey, Danny, would you be interested to do a Baja race?" You know, and so I said, "Okay, that'd be great." And then I have to explain that I was trying to get a deal in Europe. I had asked a couple teams to race Dakar, but they said, you know, you needed some off-road experience before we let you on a team. You're a motocross guy. And the last time we actually, at one time, that's how Andre Malherbe had gotten hurt at Yamaha.
Yes.
He was a motocrosser, went out, and obviously had a really bad experience his first time, crashed, and ended up paralyzed. And, you know, I'm pretty good friends with Andre. We've always stayed in touch. And so he, at the time, I was been trying to get on a team. It was with Yamaha, Sonato. I called Jean-Claude Olivier. And he said, you know, we've had a bad experience with motocrossers. But, you know, anyway, I'm willing to try, but go get some experience. So every year I did the 1,000. We won the 1,000. And Mark Johnson gave me the opportunity to be able to do this. And so we won the 1,000. Myself, Larry Rossler, Paul Krause, and Ted Honeycutt. One year, well, 3 of us. And then one year was Ted Honeycutt, and the other was Paul Krause. And then, so we won the 1,000. And we won the 500. So I'd call Europe. I said, hey, I've got some experience. We did this. Okay, Troy, you need some more experience. And then we won the 1,000 again, and we won the 500 again. So I called back, and no, you need some more experience. So then we won the Mint 400, we won the Baja 500, we won the 1,000, right? And every time it was so I won 3 times the 500 and 3 times the 1,000. And I came on the team with different spirit. And our motocrosser is kind of aggressive, but completely clueless when it came to, you know, all the little details about, like, what happens if you run out of gas? Or what happens if you know, get a flat tire? Do you know how to change a tire, motocrossers? And, you know, so it was always kind of a joke. Mark Johnson had started, and he finally came up with it. It was really funny. He says, all what's in LaPorte's fanny pack is a credit card. Because he doesn't know how to change a tire. So anyway. Because I remember one time I was on the start line, and they always tried to make me wear a fanny pack, and I think it was for the Mint 400 one time or the 500. And I go, I'm not going to wear this fanny pack. What's it for? I don't know how to use the tools, right?
Right.
So guys like Larry Rosser, you know, they could change 2 tires in 9 minutes or whatever in 6 days.
Sure.
So I remember one time I was at the start line, and Johnson goes, "You forgot your fanny pack." He runs up and he puts it around my waist, right before the start of this race. And then starting like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I grabbed the clip on the fanny pack, and I hit the button, and I took off, and it fell back behind me on the ground.
So
and that was funny.
how many Paris to the car races? How many Paris to the car rallies were you entered in, Dan? What team did you ride for there?
Yeah, well, finally I got a deal with Yamaha, and I raced the very first race in in the Pharaohs Rally in Egypt, which is an 11-day, pretty big race, and maybe 3,500-mile race.
11 days, Danny? You and how many other guys?
Yeah.
You and how many other guys on the bike?
No, just yourself.
Oh, you yourself. So there's a team, but you have your own bike. You don't. It's not like.
Yeah,
Okay.
No,
okay.
there's 3 or 4 guys on a team. 4 guys usually. If there's 2 main guys and there's 2 guys, they kind of support the other 2.
Okay.
And so, but everybody does the whole event themselves. So I think in Egypt, my very first time out, I got lost, cut the course, missed checkpoints, and I ended up getting disqualified for the day. Lost so many points. Now I'm starting way back, and in the rallies, if you start back, it seems like it's a little bit easier to win a stage. So I don't know, 5 or 6 stages that year in the Pharaohs Rally because I was starting from wide behind. You just track everybody down, follow their tracks. But when you're up in the front, top 2 or 3, it's a little harder because you're the leaders and you're trying to hold back the guys that are coming from behind. So it's a little bit of it's a lot of a game, and it was a blast, and I had a good time doing the rallies. And then I ended up, racing Dakar the very next year, the very next Dakar after the Pharaohs Rally, which is in October. Then January 1st, Dakar starts, and traditionally started in Paris, and then you did some stages all the way down to southern France. And then from southern France, you take a boat over to northern Africa with the Tangiers or in Libya, whatever port in Libya there. One year started in I can't remember the name of the town, but anyway, so it started in North Africa and finished in Dakar. And 1 year I raced from North Africa all the way to Cape Town. So I raced from Paris to Cape Town 1 year. They changed it to Dakar, and it was 21 days, and I think it was about nearly 7,000 miles.
Wow.
So that was a long, and now they're a little bit shorter, a little different now today because they had so many problems with all the threats from terrorism. They had to move the Dakar Rally to South America, and then from South America now it's back in Saudi Arabia, and they're a little less expensive to do than the African rallies. Africa is so remote, and the service and support is really expensive. And I think now the rallies that are going on in South America and Saudi Arabia, they actually can be followed by highways and supported by roads and things. So it's just much cheaper. And but now I think they're kind of coming back a little bit. The rallies definitely, for a while they had a hard time, but now they're getting more and more momentum again.
Did you snap a frame on a bike 1 year and get separated from the team for a couple of days or something? That was Scott Koch, my memory. Yeah.
So my very first experience was in the Moroccan rally and in Morocco, and I think on the maybe first or second, maybe third day, right away, I was coming down to this canyon, and it looks like a mini Grand Canyon. You're coming down this road you've got cliffs on one side of you. You look down, you got palm trees at the bottom and these giant cliffs, and you're racing down this rocky road. Morocco's really gnarly. I mean, it's to race on it. It's a lot of rock. I think it's called Morocco.
Yeah.
That's what they call Morocco. There's some dunes in Morocco, but it's over towards Algeria. And so it's coming down this road, and I drifted too far off. I kind of lost control of the bike, and I hit this little retaining, like a man-made retaining wall off. That gets water to kind of run off.
Yeah.
I clipped it, flew, and ended up right at the bottom of the canyon. I mean, I was almost to the end anyway when it happened. I flipped. I get up. Luckily, I was okay. I jumped up on my feet. I'm looking for the bike. And the wheel and the forks are separated from the bike, So I go, holy shit, I can't believe that. I survived it. Anyway, so I'm I watched the whole race go by me. The cars, the motorcycles, the trucks, all the different vehicles in the event. And people would stop. Assistants would say, are you okay? I'm okay. And they said, well, someone should be behind to pick you up soon. Okay, yeah, right. So it's like, now it's maybe 2 o'clock in the morning and no one has been by, right? So it's like 2 in the afternoon when I broke, or maybe earlier, and it's 2 in the morning. So this truck is coming down the mountain, and the race is over. I haven't seen anybody in hours. Everyone's gone by, and it's like 1930 Erlinger diesel dump truck, French truck.
Yeah.
And it's coming down this creeping down the road. So I ended up getting a ride from these guys, these two Moroccans, threw my bike in the back of the dump truck, and from then it took me till like 2 in the afternoon the next day to get to the finish. And I showed them on the map where I wanted to go, and I gave them some money, and they were just stoked. And really funny is it seemed like it took so long because every 10 miles they'd stop and they'd see some friends in some villages, and the villages have no lights in the middle of the night. We'd walk in and I'd start eating they give me some bread or whatever to take care of me, some mint tea, and then we'd get in the truck and I'd listen to music all the way, the same tape. So then so we'd travel, and they were great guys, and they listened to their one tape they had the whole way, and they got me to the finish and of that day, and unloaded the bike. And so yeah, it's kind of strange because you feel like no one's going to find you out there. You don't have no way to. So it's definitely a lot of great stories.
Yeah, and Dan, you mentioned a little while ago about Malherbe getting hurt after his career in motocross was over, and so was Jobé. And I want to read a quote here from you personally, and I quote, this is from Danny. I nearly died. It was 12 days of my life where I don't remember anything except for the fact that my lungs were so full of blood that they stabbed a tube in my chest so I could breathe. Dan, what accident was that from? And tell us about that and your recovery. What happened?
Yeah, I just in there's a town in Niger called Agadez, and it was outside Agadez. I took off in the morning, and I guess it was a little dusty, and the wind was blowing, so it was really fast, so it looks like the ground's moving along. You're trying to go, you're wide open, whatever, 80, 90, 100. Those big the twins, the big 850, 950s, go 130 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the traction. Usually, you don't have, even at 120, the bike's spinning. You don't have the power on those big bikes. It's a little bit different than the 450s. That they run today, and when you're on a flat road, they had a lot of speed, and I guess I drifted off and hit, like, outside villages in Africa. They dig holes and they put their trash and things, outside town, and then I drifted off and hit one of those berms, went over the bars, and then so I had a lung contusion, a heart contusion, and I cracked my sternum, and then my concussion kind of got worse and worse. I was out of it, so I really didn't know what was going on. But you do remember like little moments, like flashes, and I knew it wasn't good. And I remember the pain on my side, and when they shoved the tube in my lungs. And then they got me luckily the helicopter got me really quickly. The doctors knew what to do. They shoved that tube in my chest. And they flew me back to the base camp, which was in Agadez, and then on a jet, they flew me back, a private jet, they flew me back to Paris. And I was lucky because I had one of the best neuro guys in Paris. He took care of a lot of Formula One guys. And my brain started swelling, and I was in intensive care for probably 10 days. And I was on a ventilator machine, and finally got weaned off the ventilator machine. And then I lived, so I was okay.
Wow.
And it was pretty wild, and it's hard for everybody at the time. You can imagine my wife she was up in the mountains in France in the Alps, and she was driving down. She heard on the radio that I had crashed, and man. so and then she had to go straight back to Paris, and that's at the time I was living in Paris, and. So when I get into these things, I always end up living in strange countries. So so I figured anyway. So France is not strange, but anyway, I have to thank the doctors for saving my life. But yeah, and then it was really I'll never forget. I'm back home, in Los Angeles is kind of like, I don't want to ever do this again. And every moment you feel better and better, you start to forget about the pain you went through. No matter what it is, I think it's a natural built-in instinct that we have. But I just, after time went by, I'm thinking, I got to get back out there. I get it back out there. And then I ran into a guy named Eddie Oriole that I knew before, actually, and I ran into him in the rallies, and Eddie got me a deal to race later that year, that summer, after I was recuperating from the crash, to race again. And then I ended up on the Ducati team, or Cagiva Ducati, racing for them. And the next race after Dakar was the Faroes Rally again. And so I don't know why, but I was so focused, I think, and so determined after being hurt that I ended up winning the rally. And I performed better than I'd ever done, so far.
That is unbelievable, Dan. I had read where you won the Faroes Rally, but I had no idea that it was after this near-death crash.
Right, and that was kind of the part of me that wanted to come back and to get back on the bike and do it again. And I had this desire to do that. I just can't imagine what I was thinking. But so anyway, I did and got back out, and we won the Faroes Rally for Cagiva Ducati. It was a Lucky Strike team. Mm-hmm. And then we're getting ready to go into Dakar, and it was Paris to Cape Town. And then I ended up second. So I got pretty close. Had one bad day. I went sideways in Central Africa on this mucky road, kind of really slimy, raining. Because you have all the Sahara in the North Africa, but then when you get in Central Africa, it turns into jungle. Mm-hmm. And so I high-sided, and I lost quite a bit of time this one day, and that was the end of the race. So I ended up just racing every day back into the finish. After that, about another 7 or 8 days after that. But anyway, I got second. Really, really proud of that, and and then the next year, what happened in the rallies is kind of what happened all over the world. Is all the money from the cigarettes went away. They passed new laws, anti-tobacco laws, and everyone was trying to Marlboro, Chesterfield, Lucky, they all went away, and that was huge money at the time. And then it really kind of put the brakes and hurt on the industry, because they were so dependent on money from the cigarette tobacco companies. Yeah. And like Formula One and everybody, I think, is the same thing, So it was really tough, and then they pulled out, Cagiva pulled out, and then I ended up racing the next year on a Russian team. It was a Russian team. A wealthy guy from Moscow wanted put together a Russian team, and he knew I had the contacts in the rallies. Kind of went to me, and this one guy, not to me, actually went to this Frenchman, and then he came to me and asked if I would be interested in running on the team. And it's kind of funny because they thought it'd be nice to see an American on a Russian team. So at that era, still, it was pretty unique. And so that was it. And I raced one more year on a KTM, myself and Jimmy Lewis, and that was it. Then I quit racing completely.
Dan, you mentioned your wife before, Georgia, who was there when you had that horrible wreck. Where did you meet Georgia? How long are you guys married now?
Yeah, since 1984.
Oh, okay. So that's 36 years. 36 years. What about children? How many kids you have?
I have 2 kids, Shane and Estelle. And my son Shane, he's living in Norway, and he's got a little son named Marley. And his wife they're doing really great. My daughter, she's traveling. Actually, my daughter's got a really interesting job too. She works with the ATP. WTA, the Women's Tennis Association.
Oh, okay.
She's in communications. So she's just at the French Open, actually, and she's kind of she's the girl that walks on the court and takes the players to do their interviews.
I see.
So if you ever watch, you see this cute little blonde girl, looks like exactly like Georgia, my wife.
That's her.
That's her.
Donnie Emily.
So,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go on, Dan.
No. So,
Okay.
Yeah, she lives in London, and my son lives in Norway. That's funny, huh? I don't know why they ended up. I guess because just the life I had, they ended up, being interested in other things.
Sure.
So.
Sure. Now, you and Donnie Emily have been close for so long, and how long have you been working at FMF? What do you do there?
Yeah, I was actually really funny. When I was living in France, and I lived in France until '97. After I was done the race, doing some rallies and things, I still lived there for a while.
Oh, okay.
And started an importing product, FMF, and some helmets and some things from Italy. And we started a distribution business in France, my wife and I. And then we sold it to the partner. I made a partner, and then we sold it to him. And then I came back to work with Donnie since then, starting in '98. And everything with Donnie was kind of we do a little bit of everything. And at first we built up the Honda team. Remember our little Honda team we had in '98, '99, and 2000.
Yeah.
Worked on that project for a while. Just a little bit of everything. I'm really lucky to be able to do a little of everything at FMF. I don't have one specific job, so it makes it a lot of fun. And from testing and developing and product, and then just working in manufacturing with Donnie to improve manufacturing and manufacturing stuff. A lot of hands-on work there. Donnie's involved in every aspect of the shop. He likes making things with his hands. Everything he's into. Every machine, everything there. He's got his hands into it, and he just loves it. And so that makes it a lot more interesting, rather than he doesn't care about. No, he cares about the business part of it, but he's not a guy that sits behind a desk. He's involved completely. So it keeps me busy.
That is fantastic. And I'll tell you what, Dan, we're coming close to the end of our time together, but I'm always interested in what guys who raced during, the golden era of motocross like you did and rose to the top of your class and your career. If given the opportunity, is there anything you'd change about Supercross or motocross today?
Everybody has, we all have our opinions, right?
Sure.
And I don't like to say my opinions because, everyone's going to probably complain about it. But no, it's just an opinion.
Yeah.
And it's changed so much. It's kind of, I don't know if I have the right to say what I see the direction of the sport going into. It's changed so much. But I've been involved. I've watched it all from the sidelines, and it's evolving, and the culture's changed so much. The riders have changed. The style of the tracks have changed. If I would say, to me, I don't like, in the Supercross where it's just about a jump and in the air and in the air and in the air. I enjoy the racing part of it a lot. That's why I really like watching outdoor racing more.
Yes.
Is because I like lines, and I like to see another aspect to it rather than just being in the air all the time, So it's just, trying to me, it's kind of like sometimes the Supercross races it's scary to me to watch these guys being in the air all the time and then miss a jump, and like Roxon, Kenny,
yeah.
It just kills me. It hurts when I watch it. I just go, oh my God, why are they doing this? Why are these guys letting them do it? No rider has an opinion on about safety. It seems like they just let them do whatever they just keep raising the level of the obstacles for the excitement part of it.
Yeah.
And I think people go there to see a good race, and a lot of times when you're in the air, you're just not really seeing the racing. So. That's kind of why I still enjoy watch the outdoors. I think there's a lot. I know guys like to see airtime and jumping and that, but I don't know. I don't care for it as much as I do. I was always a little bit anti-Supercross. I have to be honest. Okay, here it goes.
Go ahead.
I was a little anti-Supercross, especially at the time when I was racing because I knew the stadiums were full, right? I don't know if you remember the 80s.
Sure.
In the late 70s. I mean, they were literally packed. They were not this fake 40, 50,000. They were really packed. And I was the kind of guy going, wow, 40,000 times X per ticket,
right,
plus this, plus that. I go, and our purse is like, the total purse for the year is this? I'm thinking, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, you know? So you're going out and, you know, the riders will do anything. You know, at the time when I was racing, riders didn't care about the safety. You could always find a guy, even I think Michael Goodwin told me this one time. He goes, you guys protest, I don't care. I'll find somebody else to go out and do these, you know, because there were times when some of the riders were saying, hey, the tracks are a little dangerous, you know, at the time.
Sure.
And basically that's the kind of input you get back. I don't care, I'll go find some other riders. If you don't want to do it, I'll go find other guys that'll go do it. And then the manufacturers wouldn't get behind the riders. They were a little bit more, seemed like they're leaning towards because they wanted to go, you know, the promoter. So it was a strange time. I just felt like it wasn't worth going out there and risking getting hurt. And the way they built the tracks back in the 80s, 70s, and 80s is, you know, there was no perfect pitch, ramp, face, shovel. It was like you come up as like an angle with like flat and then an angle and then flat landing. And if you didn't make the jump on the downside, it was flat again. It was nice, not nice. They didn't round nicely the second or third jump. You know, it was like when you were short, you were going to go over the bars, right?
Yeah.
So the tracks have changed, and I just feel for those guys because I just go, man, these guys, I don't want to see them get hurt. You know, I know what it takes, but they still keep going at it. I got to, you know, hand it to them. The guys have got courage more than anybody in the world, you know, to do what they do every weekend, in and out. And you imagine 17, 18 races a year, having to focus, not missing one jump, not one timing of not one obstacle, and they're in the air. Every time it's one obstacle to the other obstacle to another obstacle.
Yeah.
And to do that is just intense, you know. And I can see why now they don't want to almost do the outdoor series because they put so much energy into racing the Supercross and so much focus into it. It's almost two different events now, you know. So
yeah, and I think, Dan, I think there's a lot of people that share your opinion, and they value that. There's a lot of people that I think would agree with it. I know I do, you know. So
yeah, I like to see battles, guys bumping. You know, it's really funny too. You know, today people they try to break down how somebody passes or crashes, or I don't know. I was watching Ferrandis pass him, and I go, man, that was like, you know, they all complain how he passed. Are you kidding me? That was like totally a legit pass.
Yeah.
It's like, are you kidding me? This is motocross. What is this?
Yeah.
You know, and they it's like, come on. We all did it. We took people out way worse, but it wasn't caught on camera, and you didn't have anybody analyzing every little thing you did on the track. There weren't 300 cameras.
Yeah,
you know?
and it goes on for 3 days at every angle. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's like...
I can't even read it. It's kind of like being on Twitter or something, you know? You're never going to get to the end of it, you know?
Well, Dan, did we get to all the topics? I think we covered a lot of ground today, you and I.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think we did pretty well.
I think so.
But,
I think so.
No, really appreciate it.
Dan, thank you so much for being my guest this morning here, and regards to Georgia, and hopefully when this whole COVID thing or whatever passes, we'll all be able to get together again and share a good meal, you know?
Yeah, thanks. It would be really a pleasure. And I'd like to thank for everyone for listening. And I don't know if you have any Italian or French friends or Europeans listening, but I hope they had an interesting time, and all the Americans. Thanks a lot for all the support over the years that you've given me, and really had a great time. Love the sport, love everybody in it. I know what it takes to go out there and do what they do. It's just an amazing sport, and you know, it's just, I think only the guys that I'm talking about really, and the guys listening, really understand that if you've raced motorcycles before. So anyway. Love to all.
Thank you. Dan LaPorte, 1982 250 world champion. Thanks again, Dan. Regards to Georgia.
Thank you.
All right, Dan. Bye.
Thanks, Joe. Have a good day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. My guest this morning into the afternoon has been Danny LaPorte. Had some fascinating stories about Morocco, racing in America, a 500cc national title, and so much more. Dan LaPorte. Again, please join me at Vintage Motocross Q&A Wednesday nights at 6. And I want to thank my sponsors once again, Nightmare Racing, the best reproduction plastic on the planet. Preston Petty, thank you, Paul Stannard and Patty. The legend continues. AMSOIL, the first in synthetic oil since 1973. Full Circle Racing, rims, spokes, lacing, and truing for your vintage and modern bikes. Vintco, keep the ride going. Motion Pro for all your specialized tools, cables, and controls. And be sure to visit all those sponsors online and on Facebook. Don't forget, in 2 weeks, the little professor, David Bailey. This is Joe Abbott, Joe Abadi for Vintage Motocross Radio. Thanks for tuning in today. We'll talk to you again next week.